produced by 50 Way Studios. The life and legacy of Bob Uecker, Mr. Baseball, with Felix Taverna and Larry Hoeth. Join us Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. YouTube Live, 50 Way Studios. Just a bit inside the life and legacy of Mr. Baseball, Bob Uecker. Hello, everyone. Welcome from Southern California. Just a bit inside the life and legacy of one Bob Uecker. Part of baseball and American culture for decades, and the stories have been told about him. Part two with Larry Hoeth. He's in Wisconsin, the great state of Wisconsin. He's joining us. Part two, the life and legacy of Bob Uecker. Just a bit inside. How you doing, Larry?
Hey, we're doing great, Felix. Good to get back together with you.
It's always fun, isn't it? It really is. And investing into the research of one Bob Uecker every single day since we created and started this podcast of A Bit Inside, or Just a Bit Inside, I learned something new about Bob Uecker. And among many of his awards and his accolades of calling Milwaukee baseball for 54 years, being George Owens on Mr. Belvedere on television from 1985 to 1990. And how could we ever forget the play-by-play performance of Harry Doyle in one of my favorite baseball movies of all time, Major League? It just goes on and on and on. The legacy never dies. It just continues to grow.
That's exactly right, Felix. It goes this ways. There's I saw just in notes that you gave me in terms of like when Mr. Baseball made friendship with someone, it seemed like it was a friendship for life. Here is what many people have also said is that it would be he's like the best friend I have that I never got to meet.
You know, when I did the due diligence and research, he's in baseball's Hall of Fame. He's in the Milwaukee Hall of Fame. And also, he's in the Meat Hall of Fame. I learned this yesterday that actually they inducted him for his pitching and his product endorsement of sausages and meats in the state of Wisconsin, which were second to none. I guess he became an icon in really promoting what a lot of Wisconsins have grown up on: bratwurst, knotwurst, sausages, and Bob Uecker was definitely in the center of all that.
Definitely right, Felix. It is, in the documentary on the 82 Brewers where Bob Uecker talks about tailgating at that time it was at Miller Park. And he said it's probably one of the best tailgate areas in the world, at any sports outlet, arena, or whatever the case might be. And a big part of that is that Brewer fans will go to Miller Park or American Family Field. They'll go there hours before even the gates open, and they just have a blast. There's a lot of baseballs flying around. There's a lot of people sitting in lawn chairs and at picnics, and there it is actually their brat fries are going on, and people just getting together and enjoying Milwaukee Brewers baseball.
Bob Uecker passed away, Larry, in January of 2025. In August 24th of 2025, they had a celebration of life for him at American Family Field, formerly Miller Field, as you would attest, and 42,000 people showed up for that celebration of life. He was truly beloved.
He was, Felix, and that particular game that they dedicated to Mr. Baseball I'll never forget because I was actually watching the game from home with my wife Tammy, and they had uh, a gang of people who were actually spokespersons for that game on Mr. Baseball's behalf. And one of the members of that round table was Robin Yount. And it was so classic when because Robin and Bob Uecker were together from the start of Robin Yount's career. And I'll never forget is that when it came to Robin's turn to speak, he's like fumbling around with his microphone and he turns it upside down and he's trying to figure it out. And so like all the people, Bob Costas included around the table, they're trying to, because what they want to do is they want to help their friend because they think that he doesn't know how to work the microphone. So then after he gets it turned right side up. Okay, big smile goes on Robin Yount's face, and then he looks at the camera and he says, "Hey, you showed me that." So it was just hilarious, just funny.
And then after that game completed, they dedicated, matter of fact, those three speakers that spoke at his celebration of life were none other than Bob Costas, Bud Selig, and Robin Yount, as you mentioned. But after that ceremony ended, they also named the press box, the Bob Uecker Broadcast Center at American Family Field, a place where he called home 54 years calling Milwaukee baseball. That is astounding to me.
Yes, it is. Felix, my wife Tammy and I are very fortunate. We're actually going to be able to go to Miller Park, American Family Field tomorrow to catch the day game against the San Diego Padres. And another thing that's kind of unique about Miller Park is that there are two statues there of Mr. Baseball. One on the outside of the stadium, and then there is what's called the Euchre seat. And I think that it actually comes from the movie where some usher comes up to him and says, "Hey, buddy, you're in the wrong seat." And Bob goes with, "I must be in the front row." So they dedicated another statue, and it's way up in the nosebleed seats. I think it's in section 422. It's right at the top of the rafters of the stadium, and there you have Mr. Baseball seated. There's a seat next to him. So we're going to be going up and taking our photos with Mr. Baseball tomorrow.
You know, when I look back and I think about growing up and being a fan of baseball, one thing is so consistent with my thinking that we, as an era, listened to baseball on a transistor radio, maybe sneaking the radio into bed and hearing your play-by-play announcer. For me, it was Bob Prince in Pittsburgh. If you were in Los Angeles, Vince Scully, 67 years broadcasting Dodger baseball. Bob Uecker, as mentioned, 54 years being behind the microphone. Bob Prince, 27. Chick Hearn in basketball. He called 3,338 consecutive Laker games. It lasted from 1965 to 2002 when he had to miss and snap his streak because he had open heart surgery. So when we look back, we think about the voices who called baseball games for our favorite teams, and every city had one, and Milwaukee was not cheated. You had Bob Uecker for 54 seasons.
That's exactly right. And I have to tell you, like myself, not so much with the small transistor radio. I know that you're telling about an era where guys who were young people that were listening, they might even sneak that transistor into their bedroom to catch a night game. But I'll tell you what did it for me. Um, with which became my friend Bob Uecker, is there was a business that I was in, and I had a friend the same age who actually worked for a competing business, and his business actually, here's what his employer would do. They 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 would take all of their employees at that point in time County Stadium, and that was before we had Miller Park with the retractable roof on it. So the home opener for the Milwaukee Brewers, oftentimes it was cold weather. But my friend Frank said to me, Larry, here's what you got to do. You got to, like, we work a lot, but we also are in our vehicles a lot. You have to put on Uecker. I'm going to go to another point of getting together with friends. Is so a bunch of my friends, we would schedule every first Saturday in May to that's the opening of inland lake fishing in the state of Wisconsin. So we would head to northern Wisconsin, and we would take time out from fishing because, again, first Saturday in May, it's the running of the Kentucky Derby. But we were also, and this would have been the year 1987, where the Brewers actually started out their season with a 12 game winning streak. And so we're all listening, all my friends, myself, we're all listening to that broadcast. And at that point in time, to get that 12th win, they had to come in the ninth inning from a 3-run deficit. And there was a outfielder by the name of Rob Deere. And so Rob Deere, not only was he a cool guy, but even just the name Rob Deere, was something. But then to hear Bob Uecker's call, and he goes something like, "Get up, get out of here, gone for Deere." And just to have him say that, Rob Deere's last name, was just amazing. And then it went on from there to Jim Gantner got a walk, and then Dale Swain actually hit the home run. And when you get a chance, listen to his call of that one, Felix.
Baseball announcers are my favorite. Vince Scully, it's time for Dodger baseball. Or the late Bob Prince, you can kiss it goodbye. Or good night, Mary Edgerly, wherever you are. He would end all the games that the Pirates played with that statement. That was the end of the broadcast. What was Bob Uecker's moniker?
Well, again, he would go that, he would always lead it off if one was hit out of the park. And actually, there's big, huge signage at American Family Field, and that's actually what it says: "Get up, get out of here, gone."
When Bob Costas was paying homage to Bob Uecker, he said this, and I quote, "He was one of the most distinctive personalities that baseball and the game has ever known. But beyond that, if he was your friend, he was your friend for life." Everyone felt they had a friend in Bob Uecker. And I talked with my friend Vince DeGregory, who played baseball in the Army at Fort Belvoir and Fort Dix, New Jersey, and Virginia. And he shared with me literally tens of stories about Bob Uecker. But the one that remains dominant and so etched in my mind was that he made everybody laugh. He was non-threatening. He was a comedian by all means in his portrayal of acting in the great Miller Lite commercials with Bubba Smith and Dick Butkus and all the personalities. Tastes great, whatever it was, tastes like whatever he said. But it was such a lingo that caught on, that sort of parlayed, as we talked about in part one, the life and legacy of Bob Uecker, just a bit inside, that his legacy was greater outside of baseball. When you think about being on the Johnny Carson show dozens of times and being named Mr. Baseball by Johnny Carson, and then playing George Owens and Mr. Belvedere, as I mentioned, but his portrayal and his acting in Major League, it was funny as any sports movie I've seen. When uh, the pitcher, he's escaping my Charlie Sheen, when he became Ricky Wild Thing Vaughn, and he'd throw a wild pitch that was 10 or 15 feet off the plate. Bob Uecker would apply just a bit outside, and he ran with that for nearly his entire post-baseball career.
Yes, and there, Mr. Baseball, just as you say, Felix, he's a character, and everybody around him just had a ton of fun. And they're Robin Yount, after he retired, he'll many times he would come back and he would spend time in the booth with Mr. Baseball. And this is actually, again, it's in the movie or the documentary of the '82 Brewers, just a bit outside. But Robin told this story from the booth, and it differs a little bit than it does in the documentary. But he told of an experience with Bob, okay, where they're on the road and so they went out to eat and have some fun. And when they decided that it was time, they were walking distance to the hotel where they were staying. So Bob goes, "Okay, guys, gather up here. We're not going to walk back to the hotel. We're going to march back." So Uke's up in the front. Okay, everybody falls in line. Then there's a police officer that says, "Hey, what do you think you're doing here?" He says, "Well, we're marching back to our hotel." So then the police officers, they march along with the Brewers back to the hotel. They open the entry doors to the hotel. They salute Uke and the players as they're getting back to their hotel.
That is too funny. I could just see that, and the stories and the conversations that I've had with people that knew Bob Uecker, it goes on and on and on. He was quite the character, and when we honor him for so many reasons, because he was true blue to the Milwaukee franchises. May it be the Braves, which he came up in 1956, and he got into action in 1962. He only played for 6 years. Then he came back as the play-by-play of the Milwaukee Brewers. And on part one, you shared with our audience a story that I would love for you to repeat. And it was getting to be his last year of broadcasting. And most people thought that this was going to be his final year. And you shared with me that all the Brewers collectively wanted to win a World Series, not for the city of Milwaukee, not for themselves, but more so for Bob Uecker, for what he meant to baseball in the city of Milwaukee.
That's very accurate. And actually, in there would be the year 2020, the season 2025 last year. And Bob passes, Mr. Uecker, Bob Uecker, Mr. Baseball, he passes in January of that year. So the Brewers they have a franchise record for wins. They have 97 wins during the regular season. And right before going into the playoffs, their two-time All-Star catcher, William Contreras, he writes a letter to pump up the Milwaukee Brewer fans. And he entitles that letter, No One Better Than Us. And here's the part where, Bob Uecker was always hanging out with the guys. He would go down to the clubhouse, chat with the guys. And here's what he would say to them. He said, no one better than you. No one better than you. Just keep on doing what you're doing. And William Contreras, in his letter, he said, when Bob told us that, when he told me that, that meant the world to me. So then William Contreras goes on to explain that we got we got to this point in our season, and everyone to the man, there was only one reason that they wanted to actually get back, because Bob told them, hey, I don't have a whole lot left in the tank. And so they knew that it was probably going to be his last year of calling Brewer baseball. So everyone wanted to actually get to have him, fans included. My wife Tammy and I and all of our friends were saying, "Hey, wouldn't it be something if you could actually call his last World Series game?" So yeah,
Well, when you look back, I'm from Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh's never been a baseball town. But when you compare it to Milwaukee, as I mentioned on part one of Just a Bit Inside, I shared with our audience that when Boston moved from Boston to Milwaukee in 1953, they had a pretty nice average of over 28,000 people per night. And that was a pretty big crowd in any stadium. But they were just in awe, and they loved Milwaukee baseball. Do you think Uke was responsible for keeping the flow going year after year for 54 years?
I'm sure that he was. Felix, I'm going to give you just a couple of things also. Is that here is why with the players, because you was a player, okay, with the players, he just had a close bond. And for, I don't know if you knew this or not, but for 20 or 25 of those 54 years broadcasting, for like 20 years, you would pitch batting practice to these guys. So they would get to know him. They would see him on the field. I mean, you could throw batting practice to these Robin Young, Paul Mulder, Jim Gantner, all of those players. So they knew that he could do it, and you can bet that he would be having fun while doing that very activity. Go down to the locker room, shower, go up to the booth, and then do the broadcast.
And getting to know you and your wife, Tammy, one of the funny stories that Tammy mentioned, or a comment that she did make to me, was the fact that, A, that when Uke would promote ice cream, or he would pitch meat, that you would want one of those items that he was promoting, because he made you hungry and feel for the product he was endorsing.
Yes, very definitely. And there again, I think I said it on our first episode, is that any food item that you promoted over the air, it just made you want to have that particular product? I got you are talking about when the Braves moved to Milwaukee, Felix. Think about this for Uke, okay? He not only gets to play at a point in time with a guy by the name of Henry Aaron, all right? So when the Braves went out of Milwaukee, they went to Atlanta. So that would include a guy by the name of Henry Aaron, all right? Henry Aaron comes back to Milwaukee as a Brewer, and Bob gets to call his like 400 and or 750th home run. Amazing.
Just so many amazing little feats along the way. As I mentioned, that he also was the play-by-play guy for University of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the Panthers baseball, football, and basketball programs. And he really dedicated his entire life to baseball, outside of baseball, being a true American patriot, and just being a guy that Milwaukeeans grew up with, listening to Milwaukee baseball, maybe the Braves or the Brewers, it doesn't matter. He was a part of that, and he never forgot where he came from. I think it's been marvelous. We're just out of time here on this day from Southern California. I'm Felix Taverna. That's Larry Heft. He's a Wisconsin native. He's Mr. Badger. We call Bob Uecker Mr. Baseball, but Larry's Mr. Badger, lifelong resident of Wisconsin. So this is part 2, the life and legacy of Bob Uecker. Just a bit inside for his great line in the movie Major League, just a bit outside, who he parlayed into a calling card. For Anthony A. back at 50 Way Studio, Larry Heft in Wisconsin, I'm Felix Taverna in Southern California. Till next time, we say adios and thanks for watching.